We're right now talking to Baylor Scheierman, now former Creighton Blue Jay and NBA draft prospect. Baylor, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well. Well, I appreciate you guys having me on.
Baylor, it is so cool, like on a personal level, going from doing your broadcast in the state finals for football to talking NBA draft. I'm in my head this morning driving in. I'm tempted, and you don't have to address it because I know you don't talk about yourself a ton. I'm tempted to kind of rank this in the pantheon of athletes that have come through this state. Like, if you just say out loud the accomplishments from then to now, man, it's incredible. Like, statistically, absolutely incredible. It's almost silly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I've been blessed with a lot of great, teammates and coaches throughout my whole high school and then obviously college career. Like you said, in high school, I felt like I was a very underrated football player in the state. I felt like, especially my senior year, I didn't necessarily get a lot of love that I thought I deserved necessarily from like Lincoln and Omaha area. But I'm just thankful for the journey, man. It's been a blessing.
I'm just going to stay with it because you threw me a lifeline here, so I feel good about this. I remember during the broadcast one time, you had scrambled left and you kind of flicked the ball about, I don't know, it was about 60 yards, and I'm talking to our play-by-play, and I'm like, you guys realize his heel was on the ground. He flicks that thing 70 yards. It's on a rope. It's laughable. I wonder how much he'd like to play football in college. So I'll ask you, when did you know that football wasn't going to be your thing and it was going to be basketball? I'll tell you the play. You threw it along the left side, going to your left, down the field along the left sidelines. And do you remember that play?
No, I do. Yep, I remember it vividly. Yeah, I remember it vividly.
Yep. And I'm so like, what was the moment?
I think I really knew that I was closing the door on football. So obviously I committed to South Dakota State my junior year for basketball, but obviously my senior year I was having a great football season, and I would have given it some thought. I went to Nebraska on a game day visit, and while I was there, they wanted me to watch the tight ends. And that's when and that's when I was like, you know what? Screw this. I was just in the middle of obviously having this unbelievable season, like breaking records, and I felt very confident in my abilities to play quarterback. And I came in there, and obviously, like at the time, it's 2019. We're struggling as Nebraska football. We're struggling, and they want me to play tight end. I took it as kind of a shot at me, and I was just like, yeah, I'm just gonna close the door on that avenue.
Must be rough to have options. Further cements my thought process on, in about 10 years, you're going to age beautifully. This thing will have to get ranked, and it will be impressive. I think. No, I'm serious. I think. I think you'll be blown away.
Baylor, when you showed up at Creighton, and obviously I knew about the basketball exploits at SDSU, and I knew you had played football in high school, but I wasn't really into the high school scene at that point. And so I think you know Jacob Padilla a little bit.
Yeah.
He goes, I was tweeting about, I think this was during your exhibition at Creighton. I was tweeting about a pass that you made, and he goes, yeah, you should have seen him play high school quarterback. You should go check out his numbers. And so I looked him up, and I go, though that's a typo. I go, that's a typo. That's not correct. He goes, and I 3,900 yards and 59 touchdowns. I go, that's a typo, Jacob. That there's no possible way in 13 games that's correct. And he's like, no, that's right. And I was like, well, why didn't you just go get the 60th touchdown? I mean, come on, Baylor, what are we doing?
I just remember getting ready for that prep for that game for the finals, and I told Putney, I go, it's unfair. I said, because you were elusive, kind of fast, tough. I'm like, this is, and not to mention your wide receiving core was silly. I'm like,
no. Yeah, I had 5 guys that I could throw the ball to.
Yeah.
And like you said, I was just running around back there and then just launching it 60 yards. But what's crazy, honestly, like you said, I don't want to talk on myself, but played 13 games, and 10 of them we didn't even play the second half.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So like, you really think about it, I honestly believe if we would have, like, obviously sportsmanship aside and everything, we would have just kept playing, I could have had 80 plus touchdowns.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not even kidding.
Yeah. I mean, like, had you played even third quarters, you're looking at like 5,000 yards and 80 touchdowns.
I was asking your coach. I remember asking your coach he's like, hey, which game films do you want? Because I usually want like 3 or 4. And I was like, I don't know. Can we just start with the most competitive? It doesn't matter if it's early. Like, you know what I mean? Because I just wanted some good measurables.
Yeah.
Well, it must be rough. And here we are getting ready for the
draft. I was going to say, and all that to say, all the football exploits, you're about to make your way into the NBA, which is kind of an incredible journey, not just because of, obviously you start off at South Dakota State and then you make your way back to the state of Nebraska and Creighton. But, like I was a guy last year, and I was hearing from a lot of people when you're making your decision on whether to come back to Creighton for a year or go to the draft last year, that a lot of people are like, yeah, he probably is what he is as a prospect, and probably his stock's probably not going to change that much. But the work you put in over the summer to, transform your body a little bit, I think you totally changed the way people view you as a defender over the course of the season. Like, when you're hearing a lot of people talk about like, he's on the older side for the draft, maybe like at what point did you say, hey, I really can get better? I know there's more in there. Like, how did that process happen last year? Because I think not a lot of people were on that page.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, obviously, like, my first year at Creighton was great. We went to the Elite Eight, and it was a very fun year. But for me personally, I thought there was, like you said, things to improve on for me. And I felt like, obviously the NBA, it's a business at the end of the day. And I wanted to be 100% feeling my best and feeling the most prepared when I stepped foot into that area. And I felt like coming back to Creighton for one more year, and like you said, getting with Jeremy Anderson, our strength coach, in the spring and summer, and really working on my body, on my lateral quickness, on my explosiveness, and really just trying to get that little edge to kind of just push me, over the hump in a way. And then continuing to improve my skills as a shooter, finding different ways to get shots off, different finishes around the rim. Like, I just got better overall as a basketball player. And I felt like the transition from South Dakota State to Creighton my first year, I didn't have that summer because I went through the NBA draft process. So I kind of lost that spring and summer to really just work on myself. And so last summer, I didn't go through the process again. I just stayed in Omaha and really just went to work, and it kind of just paid dividends for me.
I'm a big body type guy, not just measurables, but like transformations. And I remember saying at the beginning of the season, just your frame was incredible. And I think the running joke for Mac sometimes or Coach Mac is, he'd always reference strength and conditioning because we would reference strength and conditioning. He's like, I think he was probably thinking, well, at some point, Jeremy, those guys, they're pretty good. But when you and I said this about Coach Mac, this is a couple years ago, especially the way that he was hitting on the transfer portal in the market. I said to Ravi and some of these guys locally, it's almost impossible to get worse under Mac's watch when it comes to development and skills and how he gets guys better. But then you pit it with kind of the strength and conditioning the last couple of years and how you guys train. Now, talk about how advantageous it was to choose Creighton at this time where you wanted to take your game to another level and you're getting development in all facets.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that was a big reason why I chose to come to Creighton. I mean, obviously, when I transferred out of South Dakota State, I could have went anywhere. And obviously, it's home, so that was a big deal. But then, like you said, I mean, we have everything you want at Creighton in terms of facility-wise. And then on top of that, Coach Mac, the system he runs, it's an NBA-style system, so you get a feel for how it's going to be, when you transfer up to that next step. And then, like you said, strength and conditioning wise, I mean, Jeremy Anderson, he's one of the best, if not the best in the country in the college ranks. And he could be at the professional level if he really wanted to. So having all that accumulated in one spot, like, just gave me the best chance for me to excel in my game in the weight room and on the court, and ultimately put me in the position I am right now to hear my name called in the NBA draft.
Baylor, how fine a line is it between freedom of movement and the type of offensive philosophies that translate from college to NBA like Coach Mack has versus discipline? How fine a line is freedom of movement and autonomy to discipline?
Yeah, it's Coach Mack, he's very specific about the type of players he recruits because, he gives his players a lot of freedom to play, and he trusts his players to know how to play the game the right way in terms of spacing and movement. And so, you say freedom and then discipline. I put discipline in the category of just like IQ and ability to understand the game. And I think, it is a fine line between being able to have freedom, but then also understanding the game at a high level to be able to go out there and play without a lot of, we're going to run these sets. You have to go here, here, and here, and do this and this and this at this particular time.
How much? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We're talking with Baylor Scheierman, former Creighton Blue Jays, getting ready for the NBA draft.
Baylor, how much of like your spatial awareness and seeing the court comes from doing so many other things your whole life other than just basketball, right? Like way you see things in pieces move, that's not just a basketball thing.
Yeah, no, it isn't. And, part of it is I just been given, a gift from God to be able to honestly just have that instinct. But I go back to just my football days too. Damon said this on the broadcast in our state championship, we played basketball on grass, it really was. I mean, in terms, basketball or football wise, I'm back there in the pocket and I have to know every receiver's routes. I have to know what the defensive coverage is. I have to know what the routes to beat that coverage is, and just having that, being able to process that so quickly, especially on the basketball court, and then just add in like chemistry as well. Like it's both of those sports helped me a lot with one another, if that makes sense.
It's just interesting. I would watch ball placement as a quarterback, then I would watch delivering balls in the shooting pocket, or if a guy's got his left hand up, he wants it in that palm. That's where the ball goes for you. How you could bounce pass a ball on a fast break, almost like passing it down a hallway, right? Just like these very narrow corridors. I'm like, I don't even know if you teach that. I suppose you could practice it, but sometimes it's just the feel.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's really a feel thing. And like when I was growing up, watching like Pistol Pete when I was super young.
Oh my goodness.
Like I saw the passes he would make. And then like when I'm playing in my YMCA rec league when I was 5, like I'm trying out. So like there's been a lot of trial and error to get to where I'm at right now for sure. But it's definitely a feel thing for sure.
Baylor, as you kind of go through this process and you kind of were the star of the NBA draft combine. It seems like that was sort of a defining moment for you as you're on your journey as a prospect. Obviously, we know all the work that went into it to get there, but what's the experience been like for you? And obviously, I know you went through this process once before, but what's it been like this time when it seems like you've got a lot of momentum going for you at this point in the process? And just how have those interactions been like as you're talking with teams and going out to all these workouts?
Yeah, well, I think one, it's just been a lot of fun. Obviously it's my second time around, so I kind of knew what to expect. And I feel like I'm at a completely different place this time around than I was last time in terms of just me as a person and me as a basketball player, which kind of has just given me that confidence to, go out and just play free almost in a sense. And like you said, the NBA Combine week was a lot of fun. Obviously, I opened a lot of eyes. But for me, I wasn't really surprised. But obviously, there were a lot of people surprised at how well I did. And then even through the continuation of the pre-draft process into these team workouts I've been going to, I think I've just opened a lot of eyes just by, my personality and just by how I play. So I've really enjoyed it. And I'm hearing a lot of great things, which is what you want, obviously, leading up to the draft in a couple days.
Baylor, so I'm curious, as you're going through the process a couple years ago coming out of South Dakota State, was there a moment in which you were like, oh, hey, maybe I'm not as ready for this as maybe I thought I was, versus how you feel now where you've gone through this work with Jeremy and been in Creighton's system for a couple years, played at a super high level? I mean, you played against Donovan Clingan and Stephon Castle that look like they're both going in the lottery at UConn.
Yeah.
Obviously a ton of high-end guys at the Big East. Like, was there a moment a couple years ago where you're like, oh, I've got some work to do?
Yeah, I think I got invited to the G League Elite Camp 2 years ago, which is like the one before the Combine.
Mm-hmm.
And I really kind of struggled just because I wasn't really prepared for how it was going to be. I had no idea what to expect. But then when I got there, I was just like, wow, this is just way different than I thought it was. And that's when I was kind of like, there's a lot of work for me to be done to grow individually and as a basketball player. And then, like you said, these past 2 years of Creighton have just given me the ultimate confidence, because I'm playing in one of, if not the best basketball conference in the country. And I'm going against all these guys who are high recruits or, like you said, lottery picks. And, I'm doing well. I was an All-American this year, which has just, given me the ultimate confidence in myself that, I really do belong here, and which gives me the ability to just play free in whatever circumstances I'm in.
Baylor, you're such an interesting, fascinating person to talk to, because you've been good your whole life. So the fit question, it's always weird for me to kind of shape the fit question, but if Baylor has to write a letter to, younger Baylor, and he's choosing schools, or it's high school or whatever, how did you negotiate or navigate like fit, right? Like, this has to be the right place for me to accentuate my skills, versus I feel like I'm pretty good and I'm going to be good regardless of where I go. Right. Like, so how do you navigate that? Because so much of the NBA is going to be about fit, because we know that there's a minimum baseline of talent. Like, all you guys are good, like, but fit matters. Right. So how do you navigate that?
Yeah. It's such a good question. Obviously, coming out of high school, there wasn't really a lot of options. South Dakota State was my only option. But I think
which still doesn't sound right. I hate to interrupt you, but that it doesn't even make any sense. I mean, considering Walters and Dom and Kai, like, just, I mean, they had fellas.
No, yeah. I mean, I'll say this. Back when I was going through the process in high school, I was definitely bitter and upset that I wasn't recruited, wasn't even given the time of day by really anybody in the high major level. But looking back on it now, obviously I wouldn't change a thing. And I'm thankful that when I went to the transfer portal, that's when all of the teams started coming, and I was just a little older and kind of knew what to expect and knew what I was really looking for in a team. When you're in high school, you can kind of get, caught up in the show of recruiting, if that makes sense. But fit's a big thing. And like you said, in the NBA, it's huge. You look at guys that have found roles in the NBA that, weren't really looked at in high school or college, and they've carved out a role in the NBA. So I think it's a big factor. And, for me, I have my agent, and the agency that I'm with is, the best in my opinion and what they do. So that gives me a good kind of head start, I think, on everybody else. But I think, like you said, the fit part is a big part of what I'm going into.
Baylor, so I got to ask you, I've got some inside info about your trip out to Utah recently. Not about the workout, but I heard you got to visit the set of one of your favorite movies.
Absolutely, bro. That was so lit. Oh my god, I think, like, I don't think people realize, like, I think people sometimes think that, like, I'm joking around about it, but, like, I actually, like, love those movies. Like,
He's talking about High School Musical, by the way.
Yeah, it was the biggest, like, check off my bucket list. Like,
Lord have mercy.
It was crazy because I got there and, like, there was a sign on the door that said, like, nobody can come in from May 26th to, like, September 23rd for construction, which meant, like, there was no high school tours allowed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started just walking around the school, and, like, there was this dude working in the auto shop that's, like, connected to the school. And I literally just asked him, like, I told him my story, like, I'm a huge fan. This is my first time here. And he let me in the school, and it was literally just me. There was nobody else in there. It was so lit.
See, that is the cool, just watching you from afar this whole, like, that's the cool thing about you. You're just eccentric and eclectic enough to be your own guy, but cool enough around just normal enough around everybody else around you that makes you inviting. I get that has to be part of what has captivated some of these draft guys when they take a look at your personality, right? Because it seems like you may be quirky, and you might, but there's this thing about you that's pretty inviting as well.
Yeah, it's hard to talk about myself in that way because, my mom always raised me to, obviously be humble.
And I hear she's nothing to mess around with too. I've heard that your whole life, so I'm gonna give her due.
She's not. She's a great. She's the best. But yeah, I think obviously, like, I'm from Aurora, Nebraska, and so when I walk into these NBA rooms, I like, oh my gosh, he's probably wearing, boots and jeans and cowboy hats. But, like,
you didn't wear overalls to any of the meetings?
Yeah, no. Like, I'm literally like Damon said, I can fit into any room and just, like, catch a vibe with any group of people. I listen to NBA Youngboy. I listen to Gunna. Like, I can, like, I'm with everything. Like, I am. I got tattoos. Like,
can rock the headband. I mean, the bowl cut.
The mullet. Like, whatever you need, I can give you. You know what I mean? Like, I like to think I'm versatile.
And then he's out here rocking with Troy Bolton like High School Musical. We love it.
Bro, there's no shame. That's fire. That is fire.
Easy to cheer for, man. We appreciate the 25 minutes. A heck of a week, and best wishes to you.
Baylor, best of luck this week. We'll be rooting for you.
I appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, babe.